Victoria and welcome back to my channel. Before we dive into this video, don't forget to hit that little red subscribe button. If you're not following me on Instagram, please take a moment to go do that as well. Lemons and Lyme or the Influence Health, they'll be right here. They'll be linked below. You can go check them out. But about 2 years ago, I shared my entire Lyme story video, and I just kind of wanted to do a complete update on that because obviously it's been 2 years. I've done a lot of mini health updates since then, but I kind of wanted to just do a consolidated, generalized update. And I also wanted to answer some of the most common questions I get about my health and my health journey. So I'm gonna give a little update and then we'll get into questions. So from my last video, I was living in Santa Fe. I was doing a bunch of like alternative holistic stuff. I was doing a ton of different IVs, bee venom therapy, that sort of thing. I just did a whole video on bee venom therapy. You can go check out if you didn't watch that. But one of the things that changed that happened right after I filmed that video was I started working with a nutrigenomic specialist. So someone who basically specializes in genetics, but from like a nutritional standpoint. And most of people in the chronic illness community and Lyme community know him, Dr. Bob Miller out of Tree of Life. So I started working with him and they analyze all your genetics. I did them through 23andMe a long time ago, and then he took that and put it through his program, was able to see like where there are deficiencies or what could be boosted, and does supplementation based off that. And so I was working with him, and the first like first few months were going really well. Like I felt like I was getting a lot out of that experience, that the things he was giving me were helping. And then, as you all know, I moved to Denver, and I moved here to start grad school. And the weekend before I started school, I passed out in a coffee shop. I had a seizure and I got a concussion. So fun. And that really triggered a lot in my body, which is understandable. Concussions are actually a lot more serious than I think most people take them to be. That just kind of like jostled my entire system, and from there on out I felt like nothing was really working. Everything that the geneticist was giving me was not helping. I worked with him for I don't know how long, maybe another 8 months or something. And everything he was giving me, I felt like nothing was doing anything. And so I stopped working with him because I just felt like I was paying for stuff that wasn't helping me personally. And then I know people who have gotten a lot out of him. So I do still recommend Tree of Life, but it just was at a point where it wasn't really helping me anymore. And I really had to do a lot of nervous system healing because of the concussion and the seizure. So, as I said, I moved to Denver, and when I moved to Denver, I started seeing a Lyme doctor here. They are Klinghardt trained, so they do the autonomic response testing, the muscle testing, as well as doing, they kind of mix Eastern and Western medicine, so they'll do antibiotics and medications as necessary, and then they do a lot of herbals and supplementation. So I started working with them when I moved, and I worked with them for maybe like 4 months, and I did the Lyme treatment that they tested me for. I was on a bunch of herbals, and I just felt like it wasn't doing anything. Like I wasn't really herxing, it wasn't helping anything. Like it just felt like, okay, I'm taking all this stuff and it's gross and I'm like not getting anywhere. And I also just kind of clashed with them. Like I was working with the PA at first who I liked, and then I saw the head doctor, and it felt like they didn't really know what to do with my case. I felt like I was much more advanced than something they could handle. It just didn't mesh with me. Like I didn't feel like they understood me or were listening or could handle my situation, or really knew what they were talking about for me personally. So I basically stopped Lyme treatment in the winter of 2017 because I didn't feel like Lyme was my big issue anymore, and the Lyme treatments I was being put on were not doing anything. So I was like, well, it's not helping. Why am I paying this money? Also, I'm not herxing, so am I really dealing with Lyme anymore? But one of the good things that came out of that was my immunologist. So the PA had referred me to the immunologist because she thought IVIG might be a good next step. She also referred me out, I have never talked about this, I don't think, to someone in the Denver area who does cold laser therapy. And I worked with him for not quite some time, but a few months of laser therapy. And I have read so much about lasers, and they are amazing, and I think that they have so much efficacy. I really think that lasers can be very powerful, but again, nothing was happening. They weren't helping me. So I stopped doing that. But I was also referred to my immunologist, and that is the person who's basically been like my main doctor right now and been the most helpful. And as most of you know, I'm now on IVIG. So when I started with him about 1.5 years ago, we went through tons of testing. We went through the whole process of trying to get IVIG. And that's really been the main thing that I have focused on for the last year is getting and starting IVIG. So I will talk about that a little bit more in a moment. But as most of you know, if you've been following me and following this channel, I've made several videos about it. So you can go watch those for more details. One of the things I do want to answer very quickly, because I get this question all the time, even though I've answered it many times, is insurance is covering my IVIG. That's why it was such a process, because IVIG is like 10 to 15 grand per infusion out of pocket. I cannot afford that every 3 weeks. So it was just a process to get the right testing and documentation for insurance to cover it. So insurance is covering that. So anyways, I started with, when I moved here, essentially 1.5 years ago, I started with the immunologist, and that's really been the main thing that I focused on. And I also I found a primary care in Denver, or in Colorado, who was amazing. She just retired, which sucks so much. But I started with her, and basically between her and my immunologist, I was diagnosed with mast cell activation syndrome, which most of you probably know at this point because I did a whole video on it. I've done 2 videos on it. And then I was also diagnosed with dysautonomia. I did the tilt table test. I had a positive test. And so that was kind of like what's happened since I've moved. The other big thing, which most of you know, is that I went to LA about 1 year ago to see a GI specialist there who's known to be one of the best in the country. People travel from all over the world to see him. So I started working with him, and he had done a bunch of testing as well, and we figured out he's very integrative. I figured out, like, we did Lyme testing through IGenics, that was negative, and all the co-infections were negative. Redid mold testing, all of that was negative. So a lot of things seem to be in remission, and it seems like at this point in time I am solely working on repair of all the damage that both the Lyme and extensive treatments have done to my body. So that's kind of been the big shift from my last video, is that I essentially stopped treating Lyme. I've been focused on repair and healing, and still figuring out some missing pieces that are like not quite clear. Like, obviously I'm not 100%, I still have a lot of work to do, but I'm kind of going in a different direction of more like overall healing. So I've been doing the IVIG, I've been doing a lot of gut healing, and then managing of my mast cell and dysautonomia. My GI doctor, I still talk to him regularly. I'm on a lot of specific supplements for me because I had so many nutritional deficiencies because my gut health is poor. And basically what we've settled on from all the testing he's done and all of the things that I've tried with him is that what I really have is nerve damage to my entire GI tract, which is kind of like obvious because I deal with CIDP. I have dysautonomia, like we know my vagus nerve is damaged. But I've done so much gut healing to no avail that we believe that, like, yeah, my guts probably still needs some more healing because, like, you know, it's so damaged. But like, I've done a lot of gut healing, and that's really not the issue at this point. It's the nerve damage. So needing to repair that is important because I have like no gut motility, and so we need to repair the nerves. So I'm getting signals to my gut to like have it do what it's supposed to do. And so IVIG is supposed to be helping with that. IVIG has been a bit of a process lately. My GI wants me to try stem cells, which is kind of just like on the back burner right now because, as most of you know, they're quite expensive. So we're figuring out whether that's plausible or reasonable at this point, because stem cells are also not a guarantee for healing my gut. They're just kind of like we can try it and see type of thing. So that's where I'm at with my gut health at the moment. It's been a little bit frustrating because I have, over the past 2 years since that video, I've treated SIBO, several rounds of SIBO. I've done a few elimination diets. I treated parasites some more. I've done a lot of like gut stuff. I do deal with recurring SIBO infections, and that's because I have poor gut motility, so things aren't moving through, and then I am getting a buildup of fermentation, which is an issue. So I think that's one of the other things I didn't mention, is that I had started working with a really amazing chiropractor when I was living in New Mexico, who was just fucking phenomenal. Like, he was just spot on with everything. He helped my gut the most of anybody in the entire universe. He is the first person to ever diagnose me with SIBO and like treat that appropriately. So I've treated SIBO conventionally, I've treated it alternatively, and I still have issues with it because of the gut motility stuff. So that's kind of what we're trying to work on. So IVIG has been, as you know, I've switched brands and doses many times. We have just switched my brand and dose again because my complement system numbers keep dropping and we cannot get those up. They were low to begin with. They've continued to drop, which isn't necessarily abnormal with IVIG, but we can't get them stabilized, which can contribute to a lot of my symptoms. It can contribute to gut health. It can contribute to fatigue, and fatigue and GI are my two worst symptoms. So I still deal with like major chronic fatigue, something I've dealt with for 15 plus years, most of my life. And so that is an area that like has not been targeted enough. My GI doctor, or my immunologist is trying to work on that now. And so we've just lowered my IVIG dose to see if we can kind of like stabilize my body a little bit with all this fatigue and figure out exactly what's going on. So right now my main treatment is IVIG. I get that every 3 weeks. So I do a Myers cocktail, which is high in vitamin C for me. That's seems to work really well, with glutathione push after for detoxification the week before IVIG, plus a round of IV fluid, just because that helps with my dysautonomia. And then I have IVIG and then, you know, pre and post fluids and stuff the next week, and then I have a week off from IVs. So that's kind of my routine right now. I do my daily detoxification. That's really, really big for me, is working on that. It helps me a lot. Heat is like, I know a lot of people with mast cell are heat sensitive. I'm cold sensitive. I love the heat. It makes me feel good. So I sauna and bath. I'm on supplements for me personally. I'm not going to go over that. Everybody always wants to know what supplements I'm on, and I can do a whole video on it. If you really want to know, let me know. But they're just so individualized that like I hate to be like, this is what I'm on, because it's not necessarily what you should be on. But I am on a lot of supplements. A lot of them are gut related, like IgG, certain probiotics, a lot of like nutrients like V vitamins and zinc and like that sort of stuff, because my nutritional levels are always so low. You all know I focus a lot on self-care. I've been working a lot on mindset. I did a whole video on that. And I've been focused a lot on, I've always focused a lot on my diet, but like finding that balance of like mental sanity with my diet, as well as like what I can tolerate, and continually working on that and adjusting that as necessary to make me feel my best. But diet is not everything, just throwing that out there. So I think that's kind of like a big overview of what's happened in the past 2 years, where I'm at with treatment. Now I want to get into the questions that I'm asked most often. So the first question I want to answer is, how did I choose the Lyme treatments that I've chosen over the years? And this is a complicated question. I initially did antibiotics, which you guys know, and that was solely because that's what that doctor did, and I didn't know any better. When I first got diagnosed, Lyme was not as well known as it is now. I found a doctor, antibiotics was a thing, and that's what I did. And I feel like, I've said this many times before, I feel like antibiotics, they get a bad rap, and I think rightfully so in times, but they have their place and time as well. And I was so sick when I got diagnosed that I needed antibiotic. I don't think herbals would have been strong. I don't think they would have been the right choice. I needed like a fast acting, very strong treatment, and antibiotics was that. And I had a bunch of comorbidities as well. I had bronchitis that I didn't even know I had. I think I had like walking pneumonia as well. Things I'd had for like months. Like I couldn't breathe, and I was like, this is normal. No one can figure out what's wrong with me. So I needed antibiotics at the time. I do believe I was on them too long. And when I started to be like, these antibiotics aren't helping me anymore, is when I started to do more research. I was really invested in the Lyme community at that point, especially on social media. And so I was finding out what other people were doing, and that's when Dr. Horowitz's first book came out as well. So I read through that entire book, and then I went to my doctor and was like, and she was reading the book as well. So we went through that and we're like, okay, I want to switch to herbals because I've read about it. I've talked to other people who've done it, and I think we should test for heavy metals and mold. And so a lot of how I've chosen treatments, it's just personal research and then gut instinct. I've done research on so many different treatments, and rifing is one of the things people ask me constantly, like, have you ever tried rife? I've done a lot of research on rife. I have plenty of friends who have done rife, but it's never resonated with me as a thing that I need to do. And my gut is so accurate. Like, my instincts are very on point. I am very empathic. I'm ruled by my gut. If you've ever done the human design, I'm a generator, so like my gut is my be all tell all, and so I listen to my gut, and so I just do a lot of research, and then I decide if it feels right or not. And being part of the social media community and the chronic illness community can be a really great thing, because I find out what other people are doing, and then I can research more about it and see if it feels like the right thing for me, and talk to my doctor about it and see if it feels like the right thing for me to be doing, and then I go from there. So that's what I have to say about that. And now on to the big question that I get constantly. What treatment helped you the most? What treatment should I be doing? Did X treatment help you? Did Y treatment help you? Will this help me? My answer is yes. I know you guys aren't gonna like what I have to say. I have no freaking clue which treatment. All of them helped me to some degree. Everything I've done, like, would I be where I am today if I had done things in a different order, or not done certain things, or continued with other things that I gave up? No, yes, maybe I'd be further along, maybe I'd be sicker, maybe exactly where I am. I think everything I've done has been important to my journey. It's a piece of the puzzle, and that's an absolute impossible question for me to answer. I know it's not what you want to hear, because we all are just trying to find that magic bullet. We're trying to find the thing that works for us. We want to know what worked for other people so we can see if it works for us. And it's just, everybody's body is so individual, and we're so bio-individual that, like, something that works for one person is not going to work for the next person. And I know that's frustrating to hear, but it's just the truth. Treatment is so complicated, and like I said, you know, I think I needed antibiotics when I first went on them. Then I felt like I was on them too long, so I switched to herbals because it felt like the right choice. And then, you know, I've done treatments where I'm like, I don't know that really did anything. Like, I did a lot of IVs, alternative IV therapy, like ozone and stuff, while I was in New Mexico, and you know, I wasn't really getting, not a lot shifted in that last like 6 to 12 months that I was there. And I was like, is this really doing shit? Like, is this helping at all? I don't feel better. But then I tested negative for Lyme in the spring of 2018, and I'm like, well, maybe all of that did kill off Lyme. Would I have tested positive if I hadn't done those treatments in New Mexico? I don't know. You know, I can't go back in time and not do them and then test. Like, I have no idea. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But like, this is where I'm at, and I just have to keep moving forward. So I know that's not necessarily the answer that you want to hear, but I can't tell you what treatment to do or not to do. That's, like I said before, I decide on treatments based on extensive research and my gut instinct, and that's what I suggest for other people. I've made a whole video on, like, it's called like what to do if you've just been diagnosed with Lyme, or like Lyme, like the video for Lyme newbies. I'll link it below, but I'd check out that video for a little bit more guidance. All right, I've gotten a lot of questions about mold lately as well. I did discuss mold in my first video. I discussed that I was diagnosed with it and how I treated it, so go check that out. And then at this point, I don't believe I'm dealing with mold issues anymore. I do practice like mold avoidance. You know, if I know somewhere is moldy, I try to avoid going there if I can. Like, I can tell, you know, sometimes you have appointments or things or obligations you have to go to a building, and you walk in, you're like, this place is moldy, I can smell it, I can see it, whatever, and I just kind of have to like deal with that. And then I come home and shower and I wash my clothes with borax. But I am not as sensitive where like that one exposure will just be the death of me, or like knock me out for weeks, or like raise mold levels in my body. I'm pretty good at detoxifying them at this point. So I just kind of practice mold avoidance as I can. I wash my things in borax if they're new or I've been somewhere where it's moldy. My friend Aviva deals a lot with mold illness, and she has done so many extensive videos on her channel about it. So I'm gonna link her channel below because she has so much info on mold, way more than I can provide, and way more than I know. And she's very well versed in it, has some really great resources and information for you. One of the questions I got asked about was psych symptoms, specifically depersonalization. This was something I dealt a lot with during the height of my Lyme and Lyme treatment. I dealt a lot with depersonalization, which is very common anxiety and depression. I do still deal with levels of anxiety and depression. I don't really deal with depersonalization anymore unless I'm having like a major anxiety flare. They kind of travel together. And then I didn't mention this before, but like treating Lyme was extremely helpful for psych-based symptoms. But then I was still having a lot of cognitive issues, and today you can probably tell I am. It's hard for me to look at the camera. My eyes are in a lot of pain, but treating my dysautonomia and mast cell helped tremendously, especially the dysautonomia. I was dealing with a lot of like, I didn't even know that it was dizziness. I just called it brain fog, but my brain fog I found out was really just like dizziness from dysautonomia. And when I started treating that, upping electrolytes, upping salt, increasing my blood pressure through medication and supplementation, doing IV fluids, that really went away. My brain fog has increased a lot. So a lot of my cognitive stuff has increased with treating mast cell and dysautonomia. And I think that a lot of that stuff, like cognitive and psych symptoms, can kind of like get all jumbled together. Brain fog leads to anxiety because you're brain fogged, all that kind of stuff. All right, let's talk about gut health because I get so many questions on this. I am not an expert. People want to know what helped with my gut the most. Treating SIBO, hands down, treating SIBO, because that was my biggest issue. So you have to figure out what your biggest issue is. Is it SIBO? Is it candida? Is it parasites? Is it just your vagus nerve? Is it just because you're eating shitty food? Like, you have to figure out what the thing is for you. SIBO is what helped me the most. I still have a ton of freaking issues with my gut. Like, it's far from perfect, which I've discussed, why those might be. I take a lot of supplements, like I said, for gut health. People want to know like what I took while on antibiotics. I did a lot of probiotics, paleo diet. That's what worked for me. Not saying that's gonna work for you, but that's what worked for me. I have treated candida and SIBO. Candida I did with a lot of antifungals like nystatin and diflucan. Candida was never like a major issue for me. I actually am running a candida test right now, so I'll be curious to see what that says with this new gut and hormone doctor that I have. But candida was never like a major problem because I was always really on top of antibiotics, and I shouldn't say I've never. Now I'm like not a sugar, I love sugar, but like I don't binge on it every day. So I minimize my sugar intake, but I balance it because I found that if it's not balanced for me, I actually get worse symptoms. I think because like candida is opportunistic, and so if you're not feeding in the gut, it will travel. Like, you need some level of beneficial yeast and whatnot in your gut, but like if you're not feeding certain ones, they will travel out systemically to find sugar in your bloodstream and muscles. So I found that like having a little bit of like fruit and maple syrup and raw honey in my diet is actually more beneficial than trying to cut all of that out for me. Reintroducing foods was another big question I got. What's helped the most with that? You know what, I just eat. Is basically what I do. I decide like I'm sick of not eating this thing, I'm craving it, I'm gonna eat it. Maybe it goes well, maybe it doesn't. Gut healing in general obviously is helpful. Like for me, a lot of detox, making sure I'm getting tons of greens and a lot of nutrient dense foods allows me to be able to have like some ice cream and cookies with my friends on the weekend or something like that. Gluten-free and vegan ice cream, of course, but you get the idea. Another big question I get a lot is, how do you see? Can I see them? Like, how do you find good doctors in your area? And for me, it's always been word of mouth and referrals. So I find one doctor who I trust. Like, when I first moved here, I found my Lyme doctor who referred me to my immunologist, who's been great. My immunologist has referred me to other people who I've needed as part of my team. My primary care I found through another chronic illness friend. So I have a huge network of chronic illness friends that I've met through social media, and I have chronic illness friends all over the country. And so when I moved here, I knew a couple people. They had found doctors. I asked them for their names of their doctors, and I went to them. So it's word of mouth and referral. I've gotten asked about chemical sensitivities. I do have chemical sensitivities. I'm actually very chemically sensitive. Like I said before, I'm relatively good at detoxing it out once I'm home, but if I'm in an environment that has like a lot of smells or has used really toxic cleaning products, I feel so incredibly sick, and that's really challenging for me. So like going to Target is a fucking shit show. I love Target, but it makes me feel so sick. So I try and minimize it to the point where I have like one trip, I'm in and out, or when my parents come up, I'm like, can you go to Target and get this stuff for me? My space is a low toxic or toxin free, I mean, can it really be 100% toxin free? No. Environment, you know, I use all natural products. I've talked about this so many times. I talk about my Instagram all the time, but I don't use perfumes, I don't use hairspray, I don't use toxic stuff in my environment. So at least I know that my apartment is a safe space. I think that's really important, is creating a safe space for yourself that you can go to when nowhere else is. And a really great question I wanted to answer is, somebody asked, you know, has your quality of life changed from your last video, from your first Lyme story video? And yes, it's been up and down. This whole journey is up and down. You know, there are definitely things that have improved a lot. There are things that haven't. I think one of the biggest shifts is working on my mindset. That's really been the thing that's helped the most. I made that mindset video. I will make a part 2 eventually. I'm kind of just like working through some things. But really working on that emotional healing piece has been really important. And the last question I wanted to answer was, somebody asked, like, how do you keep going when it's been so many years and you're not in remission, or you feel like you're just not getting anywhere? That's a really good question and a really challenging question. I have been through a lot emotionally, like all of us with chronic illness have, of course. And I can't say too much because YouTube will censor my video if I do. You know, I've had some really negative experiences and they've been hard to get through. One of the biggest things for me is not suppressing those feelings, like letting them out and letting them ride through me. Derek and I talk a lot about this topic on the podcast, so definitely check it out if you haven't. Beyond Your Diagnosis is our podcast. You can find it on almost any podcast app. But like, letting myself feel those emotions, and like, they're not wrong or bad. I think not labeling them as like, I shouldn't be feeling this or it's okay to feel this is really helpful. Like, not labeling is really helpful. And just like letting myself be okay with feeling them. And the other key thing is support system. Support system. Like, having a support system is so key. Like, I have a really supportive family. I'm lucky in that sense. My parents are really great. But I talked about this like 20 times in this video. I have made so many amazing chronic illness friends that just I can call or text or vent to whenever I need to, and I can say whatever I want, and without fear of them being like, you need to be hospitalized, or like judging me in any way, because they get it and they've been through it. And it's just like, just let me vent, just let me like express all these negative emotions. And they're just like, I feel you, I hear you, I validate you. And that's really helpful, and then I can move on from there. Just riding the waves of all of it, and like sometimes I have to take breaks and be like, this sucks and I feel this way and it's shitty and I don't want to deal with treatment and I want to sit on the couch for a month and eat Cheetos. Like, I know that helps a lot of people, and I have my phases of that too. But then also having that like allows me to be motivated again, to be like, I'm gonna fucking figure this out and find an answer. I'm just like in general very type A and very motivated. It's like, sometimes I don't even care about like me. I'm just like, I want to figure this out so I understand what the hell is going on with the human body, and like I can share with other people. And like, I think sharing my story has been really helpful for me to keep going, because like, even if only one person messages me and it's like, your post today or your video or you sharing your story has really helped me or inspired me, that helps me. Like, that if I can be that person that I didn't have when I first got sick. Like, when I first got sick, I didn't know the chronic illness community. There wasn't a lot of talk about Lyme. Like, that was scary. You know, I didn't know what to do or what I was doing. And so to be able to share my story and have that be helpful to somebody else is just very helpful to me. It's motivating to me in a sense, and just it's like, okay, like, this is important. Like, other people need to know they're not alone. We're gonna figure all this out together. So like, I really like helping other people, and if this is the way that I'm going to do it in my life, then it means that this whole experience wasn't a waste in some sense, if that makes sense. Again, Derek and I have talked about this on the podcast. There's a whole episode on finding a support system and creating one, on why it's important. I think that's episode 3, which would be really good to check out. But per usual, this video is getting long, so I'm gonna sign off. Go make some green juice. One of the things that helps my gut. And I'll see you all next time. But don't forget to like this video if you found it helpful and informative. If there's things you want to know, leave them below. Videos you want to see, leave them below. And I'll see you all next time.